Welcome back. I am Ms.N.S.Lavanya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, KCS Kasinadar College of Arts and Science. In this video, you are going to learn a very interesting novel, Gulliver's Travels, written by Jonathan Swift. Let's have a look at the introduction. Jonathan Swift was born in Dublin, Ireland on November 30, 1667. His father, an attorney, also named the same, died just 2 months before he was born. He was a sick child. He suffered from Meniere's disease, a condition of the inner ear that leaves the afflicted nauseous and hard of hearing. He commenced his undergraduate studies at Trinity College in Dublin. Glorious Revolution spurred in 1688 and he moved to England. He served as a secretary to English statesman Sir William Temple. After his death, he completed the task of editing and publishing his memoirs. In 1704, Swift anonymously released A Tale of a Tub and the Battle of the Books. He became the editor of the Examiner, Tory's official paper. The detailed summary of Gulliver's Travels. The novel Gulliver's Travels recounts the story of Limmer Gulliver, the life beginning with his family history. He is the third of 5 sons. In his teenage, he studied at Cambridge. His family is too poor, so he is sent to London to be a surgeon's apprentice. His name is James Bates. He learns mathematics and navigation with the hope of travelling. He then becomes a surgeon aboard a ship called the Swallow for 3 years. He settles in London and marries Mary Burton. His business begins to fail when his patron dies. He once again joins the previous profession and travels for 6 years. When he plans to return home, he accepts the lost job on a ship called Antelope because there is already a adventurous spirit in his soul. This is the picture of the Gulliver's Travels, where Gulliver landed in an unknown island called Lilliput. The Antelope encounters a violent storm in the East Indies and 12 crewmen die. Gulliver, along with 6 men, escape in a boat and reaches the shore. Since he is tired, he falls asleep. When he wakes up, he sees he is tied to a tiny threads. To his surprise, he sees a 6-inch tall man climb onto his body. When he shouts, they move away and return crying out, Hecina Decul. Gulliver tries to escape, but they attack him with volley of arrows. He decides to be calm till night. They build a stage next to Gulliver and one of them climbs onto it and makes a speech, which he could not understand. He indicates to the tiny men that he is hungry and they bring him baskets of meat and 2 barrels of water. He is moved by their kindness and generosity. Gulliver is to be taken to the capital city. He desires to walk, but they carry him in a cart which is pulled by 900 men, which is their custom. Once the Lilliputians chain Gulliver to the building, he is allowed to stand and view the entire countryside. He sees the beautiful and rustic city and wonderstruck by the appalling and appreciating city. The emperor visits on horseback from his tower. He is dressed plainly and carries a sword to defend himself. He and Gulliver converse. After 2 hours, Gulliver is left with a group of soldiers to guard him. Some tries to attack him. He puts 6 of them in his pocket. 600 small beds are swung together to make a bed for him. The news of his arrival also spreads to other people. They are amazed and they want to see him. Officers who witnessed Gulliver's treatment of the soldiers report to the council. The emperor decides to respond with kindness. All arrangements are made to keep him happy. Every morning, Gulliver asks the emperor to set him free, but the former refuses. All his weapons are taken away. The emperor decides to entertain him with shows. He is happy, but for a short time. Anyway, he wants to return. Gulliver will be set free only if he swear to obey the articles put forth. He must assist the Lilliputians in times of war, survey the land around them, help with construction, and deliver urgent messages. His chains are removed. After regaining his freedom, Gulliver goes to Melando, the capital city. The emperor wants him to see the magnificence of his palace. Reldresal, a government official, comes to see him. He tells that two rebel groups threaten the kingdom. It is divided into two factions called Tramhangsan and Slamexan. The people in the groups are distinguished by the height of their heels. The Lilliputians fear an invasion from the island of Blefuscu, other great empire of the universe. Reldresal describes the history of the two nations. The conflict started when the emperor's grandfather ordered the Lilliputians to break the eggs on the small end first. The government of Blefuscu accused them of disobeying their religious doctrine, the Brunrikal. A war has been raging between the two nations ever since. So Gulliver is asked to defend Lilliputians. He feels it is not appropriate but offers his services to the emperor. Gulliver captures the ships of Blefuscu and is treated as a hero in Lilliput. When the emperor orders him to bring all ships, destroying totally their military strength, but Gulliver refuses, saying that he discourages slavery. The courtiers were staunch against him, but considering his favor towards Lilliputians, he forgives him. The courtiers understand and they follow the king's orders. As an Ardak, a person of high rank, Gulliver need not perform all the duties laid down in his contract. When the emperor room catches fire, he urinates to put out the flames as he forgot to bring his coat. The emperor pardons him, but his wife can no longer tolerate living there. Gulliver has done a disrespectful act in the city of Lilliput. Gulliver describes the general customs and practices of Lilliput. Their animals, trees are sized in their proportion. Their eyesight is also adapted to their scale. They are well educated, but the writing system is odd to Gulliver. They write from one corner of the page to the other. The dead are buried with their heads pointing directly downward because they believe that dead will rise from the graves. Gulliver describes some other laws of Lilliput. Anyone who falsely accuses someone else of a crime against the state is put to death. Deceit is considered worse than theft because honest people are more vulnerable to liars. The law provides not only punishment but also rewards of special titles and privileges for good behavior. Children are raised by the state. The schools are chosen based on their parents' position. Gulliver goes on to describe the intrigue that made him to leave Lilliput. When he prepares to leave, charges were framed against him. Reldresal asked his sentence to be reduced, calling not for execution but for putting his eyes out. He is to be starved to death slowly. Fearing this punishment, he crosses the channel and arrives in Blefuscu. He arrives in England and makes a good profit, showing miniature farm animals that he carried away from Blefuscu in his pockets. 2 months later, he sets sail on a ship called the Adventure, traveling to the Cape of Good Hope and Madagascar, before encountering a monsoon that cast him away at an unknown island. There are no inhabitants and the landscape is barren and rocky. He is shocked to see a grass about 20 feet high. Then he notices one giant comes to harvest. So he screams loudly and the giant picks him up from the field and carries him to his master. The giant's master asks other servants to look at him and asks if they have seen anything like this. He presents a purse full of gold to the farmers and they cannot figure it out. The farmer takes Gulliver to his wife. This is the picture of the people of Brobdingnag, very tall. The farmer's son tries to frighten him and he strikes his son. Gulliver asks him to forgive. His 9-year-old daughter has a doll's cradle that becomes Gulliver's permanent bed. He calls her Glumdalclit or nursemaid. She becomes Gulliver's caretaker, guardian and teaches him giant's language. The farmer begins to talk about Gulliver in town and his friend advises him to display Gulliver in the market. He performs tricks to entertain people. Gulliver becomes tired after returning from market. People come from miles around to see him and are charged heavily. The farmer takes his daughter and Gulliver to largest cities to make fortune. They reach Lorbrulgrad and is shown 10 times a day to please the visitors. Literally, Gulliver becomes very tired. Gulliver's condition becomes worse and the farmer wanted to make huge fortune before he dies. The queen is delighted with Gulliver's behavior and buys him for 1,000 gold pieces. He explains his suffering to the queen and she is impressed by his intelligence. She takes him to the king, who at first thinks he is a mechanical creation. The great scholars decide that he is unfit for survival. They provide him all the facility. The queen finds him very entertaining. The king converses with Gulliver on issues of politics and laughs at his description of the goings-on in Europe. He finds it amusing that people are of such a small stature think themselves as important. Gulliver is hurt. The queen's dwarf is jealous on Gulliver as queen likes him most. He gives lots of trouble to Gulliver. Gulliver finds the people of Brobdingnag in general to be ignorant and poorly educated. They know the art of printing but don't have enough books. Their writing is simple and straightforward. Gulliver wants to recover his freedom. A page takes him in a giant box as he needs fresh air. When he wanders, the eagle carries him off and drops him. He thought he would be dead, but he hears voices that he need not worry as his box is tied to a ship and carpenter will come to drill it open. He says that anyone can just open it. He hears them laughing. Then he understands that he is speaking to a group of people of his size. Gulliver begins to recover on the ship and he tries to tell the sailors the story of his recent journey. He shows them things he saved from Brobdingnag like comb and a tooth pulled from a footman. When he reaches home, it takes him some time to grow accustomed to his old life, and his wife was angry and asked him not to go to sea again. But his adventurous spirit makes him go. After 10 days, Gulliver sets out for East Indies. Pirates attack the ship. He begs them to set him free. He remarks that there is more mercy in a heathen than in a Dutchman. He becomes angry and punishes Gulliver by sending him out to sea in a small boat with only 4 days' worth of food. He finds some islands and goes ashore once again. He lands in a different island, is immediately surrounded by people and notices that they are all quite odd. Their heads are all tilted to one side or the other, with one eye turned inward and the other looking up. Their clothes are adorned with images of celestial bodies and musical instruments. Each of them carries a flapper made of a stick with a pouch tied to the end. The job is to aid conversation by striking the ear of the listener and the mouth of the speaker simultaneously to prevent king's mind from wandering off. This is their perfect duty. This is the picture of Laputa, a floating island. Gulliver and king could not converse as they speak different languages. He is taught several sentences and he comes to know that the name of the island is Laputa, floating island. The king orders the island to be moved above the capital city, Lagodo, in order to collect petitions from the people. The languages relies heavily on mathematical and musical concepts. They despise practical geometry and they are very sure that there are no right angles in their buildings. He looks around and finds whatever they say is true. Gulliver is so bored in Laputa as people are far more knowledgeable than him. There is one lord whom he considers intelligent. He sends a petition to king through him. His request to leave the island is sanctioned and is taken to mountains above Lagodo. He finds another Lord Munodi and is invited to stay in his home. He finds that the land is poorly cultivated and the people are miserable. The Lord explains that a few people, after returning from Laputa, created an academy and applied their knowledge here, and none was successful. Gulliver was invited to visit the academy. Gulliver visits the academy where he meets a man engaged in a project to extract sunbeams from cucumbers. Another man tries to turn excrement back into food. An architect designs a way to build houses, and a blind master is teaching blind apprentices to mix colors for painters according to smell and touch. On the other side, there are people engaged in speculative learning. A linguist attempts to remove all the elements of language except nouns. Gulliver grows tired of the academy and yearns to return to England. He knows that that is the only way to get out of this academy. Gulliver stays home for 5 months and sets sail again. Now he is the captain of the ship called Adventure. Since many crew members die of illness, he recruits new members who revolt and become pirates. He was left on an unknown shore. He finds a strange animal attacking him and he hits the animal with a sword. Then a horse comes to his rescue. The horses discuss and appear to be intellectuals, and he believes that they are magicians who transformed themselves. This is the picture of Houyhnhnms in Gulliver's Travels. The horses use the words Yahoo to describe him, and they are Houyhnhnms. Gulliver is led into a house and he finds there number of horses. They teach him their language. They provide him with milk and oats. After a few months, he learns their language and explains that he comes from across the sea. But they don't believe. He is asked about the treatment of the horses in his country. He replies that they are used for traveling, racing and drawing chariots, to which they express disbelief. Over the course of 2 years, Gulliver explains the state of affairs in Europe, war, law and the justice system, money and the different kinds of food. He develops a love for these creatures he is reluctant to leave. The principal virtues of Houyhnhnms are their friendship and benevolence. He settles there, but the master asks him to leave. He doesn't want to return to Ireland, so searches a new land to live. The seaman, including Don Pedro, finds him and is forced to return to his place. Conclusion. Gulliver concludes his narrative by acknowledging that the law requires him to report his findings to the government. They assured they will not attack those places, but he did not reveal any of the places because he particularly wishes to protect hymns. Thus, the end of the beautiful novel. We meet again in the next video. Thanks for watching.